There is a specific moment that nobody warns you about. Not the moment you finally leave, not the moment you stop crying, not even the moment you stop crying, not even the moment you realize you're okay. The moment nobody talks about is quieter than all of those. It's the moment you realize they're still watching. Long after the relationship ended, long after you stop reaching out, long after you rebuild your life without them in it, they are still there, somewhere in the background, eyes fixed on every move you make. And the reason they can't look away is more revealing than anything they ever said to you while you were together. Most people who have been in a relationship with a narcissist expect one of two things after it ends. Either the narcissist comes crawling back, desperate and apologetic, finally ready to give you everything they withheld, or they move on instantly, completely unbothered, replacing you so fast it feels like you never existed. Both of those things can happen, but there is a third outcome, one that nobody in this space talks about honestly, and it is the one that applies to a very specific kind of person. The person who loved deeply, stayed long, and then one day simply walked away without making a sound. If that's you, then what happened next in their mind is something entirely different from either of those two scenarios, and understanding it is going to change the way you see everything that came before. Here is the truth about how a narcissist thinks, and it is important to understand this clearly, not to feel sorry for them, not to go back, but simply because clarity is the thing that sets you free faster than anything else. A narcissist does not experience relationships the way you do. Where you felt connection, they felt control. Where you felt love, they felt supply, a steady, reliable source of admiration, attention, and emotional energy that kept their fragile sense of self inflated. You were not a partner to them in the way that word means to a healthy person. You were a role, a function, a mirror that reflected back exactly the version of themselves they needed to believe was real. And for a while, you played that role better than almost anyone ever had. That last part is the part that matters. Better than almost anyone ever had. That last part is the part that matters. Because you were not just any mirror. You were a patient one, a loyal one that stayed when others left, one that forgave when forgiveness wasn't deserved, one that kept choosing them even when every rational part of you was whispering that you should go. People like that are not common, and even a narcissist whose awareness of other people is limited almost entirely to what those people provide eventually registers on some level that what they had with you was not easily replaceable. Not because they loved you the way you deserve to be loved, but because you gave them something most people are not willing to give to anyone, unconditional access to your loyalty, and you held the door open long past the point when it should have been closed. So when you finally closed it, quietly, without drama, without a final speech or a list of grievances, something happened inside them that they were completely unprepared for. Not grief exactly, not guilt, something more uncomfortable than both of those things combined. The sudden disorienting awareness that for the first time in the entire relationship, they were not the one holding the power. You left, not them. You decided how this chapter ended, not them. And for someone who has structured their entire emotional life around being the one who controls when things begin and when things end, that inversion doesn't just sting, it lodges itself somewhere deep, and it does not come out. Contrast that with what you were feeling in those first weeks after you left. You were probably not feeling powerful. You were probably second-guessing yourself, replaying conversations, wondering if you had overreacted, wondering if they were fine, wondering if they were already with someone new and completely unbothered. That gap between how lost you felt and how unsettled they actually were is one of the cruelest ironies of leaving a narcissist. You walked away feeling like the one who lost something. They stayed behind feeling like the one who'd been robbed of control, and neither of you knew what the other was actually experiencing. That asymmetry is important. Hold on to it, because as this video unfolds, you are going to understand exactly what was happening in their mind during those weeks and months after you left. You are going to understand why someone who seemingly never valued you while you were there became unable to stop tracking you once you were gone. And more importantly, you are going to understand what that says, not about them, but about you, about the kind of person you are, about the rare quality you carry that most people never recognize in themselves until someone incapable of love accidentally reveals it by being unable to forget them. This is not a story about the narcissist. Not really. They are just a lens. This is a story about what happens when someone who is never meant to be controlled finally stops pretending they can be. What happens to the air in a room when the one person holding it all together simply walks out? What happens in the mind of someone built entirely around power when they encounter, maybe for the first time in their life, a person they cannot pull back? That is the story. And it begins not when you left, but
But long before that, in T, the quiet moments when you were still there, still trying, still giving everything you had to someone who was already calculating how much more they could take. Stay with this, because what comes next is the part they will never tell you themselves. The silence is what breaks them. Not the arguments, not the accusations, not even the moment you packed your things and walked out. Those things they can handle. Those things, in fact, they are almost comfortable with, because conflict is still a form of contact, and contact means they still have access to you. When you fight with a narcissist, you are still in the game. When you cry in front of them, you are still giving them something. When you send a long message at midnight explaining exactly how they hurt you, you are still handing them proof that they matter to you, which every reaction, even a painful one, is still a form of supply. And supply is the one thing they cannot function without. But silence. Silence is something else entirely. Silence is the one thing they have no move against. And when you went silent, something in their world stopped working in a way they had never experienced before. Think about how their mind processes the end of a relationship under normal circumstances. Under normal circumstances, they are the one who pulls away first. They are the one who introduces distance, who manufactures reasons to create space, who slowly withdraws attention until the other person begins to panic. And that panic, that desperate, reaching, pleading energy from the other person is exactly what they feed on. It confirms their importance. It confirms their power. It tells them that no matter how badly they behave, they are still the center of someone's emotional universe. And then when they have fed enough, they return. Charming, apologetic, full of promises, and the cycle resets. They have run this pattern so many times it is automatic. They do not even think about it consciously. It is simply the rhythm of every relationship they have ever had. You disrupted that rhythm. Not by fighting harder, not by exposing them, not by engineering some dramatic exit designed to make them realize what they lost. You disrupted it by doing the one thing the pattern has no response to. You stopped reacting. You stopped explaining. You stopped giving the emotional feedback that the entire system depends on to function. And when you did that, the machine ground to a halt, and they were left standing in the silence trying to understand what had just gone wrong. Not because they missed you in any deep or genuine sense, but because without your reactions, they genuinely did not know how to locate themselves. This is the part that requires a moment to sit with,